I didn't catch my wife cheating the way people expect. There was no lipstick on a collar. No late-night texts lighting up the room. No sudden passwords or suspicious phone calls. It started with mileage. Back in the early 2000s, my wife and I had 2 kids, 4 and 6 years old. Old enough to talk. Old enough to casually mention things without realizing they mattered. That's what tipped me off. They started talking about staying with their grandparents during the day. At first, it didn't seem strange. My wife worked part-time, and sometimes childcare gets complicated. But her parents lived 90 minutes away, and the kids mentioned being there a lot. 2 or 3 times a week, almost every day she wasn't working. When I asked her about it, she shrugged it off. Said I was imagining things. Said she might have gone a couple times. She was a terrible liar. So I stopped asking questions and started paying attention. I tracked the mileage on her car. Nothing fancy, just wrote it down once a week. Within a month, the numbers didn't lie. She was driving an extra 400 miles a week. No errands explain that. No innocent explanation fills that gap. Something was happening. And then one day, she made a mistake so small it almost felt like fate. She left a sticky note on the computer desk. Her AOL password. This was before smartphones, before two-factor authentication, before digital paranoia. She probably never imagined I'd look. I looked. I logged into her email, and there it was. A chain of emails between her and her college best friend. Casual, laughing, cruel. They talked about how my wife was sleeping with one of her old high school ex-boyfriends. How often, how exciting it was. And then, the part that stuck with me the longest, they laughed about his wife, made fun of her weight, mocked her body after having kids. I printed everything. Didn't confront her. Didn't scream. Didn't even let my hands shake. I just needed proof. Real proof. So I called a friend of mine who was a cop. He listened quietly and said something I'll never forget. Call Ron. Ron was a former detective who'd gone private. A professional, discreet, ruthless in the most boring, methodical way. I hired him, gave him the emails, the schedule, the mileage, and Ron delivered. His report was flawless. Photos, dates, times, locations. My wife would drop the kids at her parents' house, drive to meet him for lunch. Then they'd go to a cheap motel for a few hours. After that, she'd pick up the kids and come home like nothing happened. I stared at those photos for a long time. Not because I was angry, but because something in me went completely quiet. I hired a divorce lawyer the same week. I grew up in a home where cheating destroyed everything. My parents tore each other apart, and my siblings and I paid the price for years. I swore I'd never do that to my kids, so I planned carefully. Then I asked Ron to dig into the man she was cheating with. Ron smiled when I asked. Turns out his name was Bob. Bob was married. Bob had 3 kids. And Bob worked as a vice president of sales at a company owned by his father-in-law. That detail mattered. I had my lawyer draw up the divorce papers. Then I asked Ron for multiple copies of his report. And one more favor. On the same day, my wife was served divorce papers at her workplace. Ron met Bob's wife. He showed her everything. Every photo. Every timestamp. Every motel receipt. I didn't ask Ron what she said. I didn't need to. Because the aftermath was public record. Bob's wife emptied their joint accounts. Took the kids, left. Her father fired Bob immediately. And since her parents owned the house Bob lived in, he was evicted. The divorce was brutal. Court filings showed restraining orders, police reports, physical confrontations. At one point, Bob showed up at the house and started arguing. His brother-in-law stepped in. Bob left with a broken nose. There were arrests, charges, jail time. I searched for Bob years later. Nothing. No LinkedIn. No Facebook. No trace. He disappeared. His ex-wife, though. She went to work at her dad's company. He eventually took it over when he retired. She did just fine. As for me, the divorce with my ex was calm, clinical, focused on the kids. I didn't fight her. I didn't punish her. I didn't destroy her life. I just removed her from mine. We co-parented. We were civil. We spoke only about what mattered. Now our kids are adults. I don't speak to her at all anymore. I don't hate her. She's simply someone I used to know. And that's the thing people misunderstand about revenge. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to cost you your soul. Sometimes, the most devastating, revenge is letting the truth speak to the people who deserve to hear it. And then walking away while everything burns behind you. Because if you're going to cheat on your wife with mine, you better be prepared to lose everything. I didn't scream when they fired me. I didn't threaten legal action. I didn't storm out. I didn't even look angry. I just smiled politely and let them destroy themselves. This happened in the early 2010s, back when YouTube wasn't the monster it is today. Universities were just starting to realize that video content mattered. Social media teams were tiny. Video departments were usually one person, if they existed at all. That one person was me. I was hired as a content creator for a university that wanted to kickstart their YouTube branding. The pay was terrible, about $2,200 USD a month, but at the time, video jobs were rare, and I needed the experience. On paper, it sounded manageable. In reality, it was a nightmare wrapped in a smile. On my second day, my manager sat me down and slid a document across the table. My KPI, 85 videos, each 3 to 10 minutes long, in 52 weeks, by one person, no team, no assistants, no budget. Just me. And here's the fun part, I wasn't just editing. I was writing scripts, casting talent, directing shoots, running camera, recording audio, composing music. Yes, composing. They were too cheap to pay for a royalty-free music subscription, so they expected original scores. Oh, and I had to use my own equipment. Their cameras were ancient. Their computers couldn't even handle 720p, let alone 1080p. I tried to explain this to my manager. She smiled. That corporate weaponized smile. She told me, just give it a try. If the videos are good, I won't focus too much on quantity. That sentence would later become the rope she hung herself with. So I agreed. For the first month, things were fine. She was pleasant, encouraging, almost friendly. Then she found out I was a smoker. And overnight she became a different person. Her tone changed. Her patience vanished. Her eyes sharpened. A colleague literally facepalmed when I mentioned it. She pulled me aside and whispered, "She hates smokers." She's gotten people fired for that. And suddenly, nothing I did was right. If I came back from a break, smelling like smoke, problem. If I arrived 5 minutes late, problem. If I wasn't reachable during lunch, problem. Never mind the fact I was working 60+ hours a week, 6 days straight. Never mind the overtime. Never mind that my videos were performing better than anything the university had ever posted. I kept my head down. I told myself, just do the work. Let the results speak. 5 months in, I was called into the director's office. My manager was already there. She had that expression, the one where someone pretends to be disappointed, but you can see the excitement leaking through the cracks. My stomach dropped. The director folded her hands and said she was concerned. Concerned that I had only completed 30 videos, I explained everything. The workload, the hours, the fact I was a one-man army, the fact those 30 videos had the highest view counts the channel had ever seen. I even repeated my manager's exact words. She told me quality mattered more than quantity. The director didn't care. She said the KPI was simple, 85 videos in a year. And since we were nearly halfway through the year, she felt it was best to cut the cord early. Then my manager smirked and said something that changed everything. We'll just hire a professional production house to finish his work. The director gave her a strange look, then nodded. You don't need to worry, she told me. Manager will get the job done. That's when the light bulb went off. Because I was the content professional, and one of my responsibilities was maintaining the university's database of production houses, a database my manager knew absolutely nothing about. I walked back to my desk and calmly rewrote history. I changed phone numbers, scrambled emails, broke contact links, all except one. A production house where my friend worked? I called him immediately, told him everything. Then I laid out the plan. He'd pitch for the job. I'd coach him exactly how to win it. And his company would pay me a 15% finder's fee. He didn't hesitate. Neither did his general manager. Especially when he realized this was 6 months of work worth high 6 figures. I handed them a playbook. What the university wanted to hear. What visuals they loved. What buzzwords made the director nod. What my manager secretly obsessed over. When they came in to pitch, they were the perfect fit. The director was amazed. My manager was glowing. They signed the contract on the spot. Now here's the part my former boss didn't understand. Hiring a production house is expensive. Very expensive. Each video cost 2 to 3 times my monthly salary. But with a full crew, producers, directors, editors, they could pump out content fast. And they did. 50 videos in 4 months? At a cost equal to over 100 months of my salary. And I collected 15 months worth of pay without lifting a finger. I went on holiday. I saved money. I enrolled in a respected film school overseas. I thought that was the end of it. Then I got a call in Bali from the same colleague who had warned me about my manager. She was laughing. My former manager had been fired. The director had been absolutely destroyed by the chancellor. Turns out the project I was hired for had a budget equal to about 1.5 years of my salary. They exceeded it by over 10 times. My manager had panicked, so desperate to prove she could finish the project without me, that she approved massive spending. Without authorization, she sacrificed herself trying to save face. And failed. My friend? He got promoted to full director at his production house. Me? I got paid for 1 year, after getting fired. And the best part, I never raised my voice. I never broke a rule. I just let arrogant people underestimate the quiet guy who actually knew how everything worked. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's budget approvals, signed contracts, and watching karma audit the books.